The last few years have been a complete disaster for the UK. In this video, we're taking a deep dive into the current economic woes of the United Kingdom, a volatile storm brewed by government missteps, the effects of Brexit, and a global recession. The end result? Total economic catastrophe.
I am confident that together we can ride out the storm.
Corporation tax rate will not rise to 25%. It will remain at 19%, and we will have the lowest rate of corporation tax in the G20.
The UK now facing what looks increasingly like a financial crisis, with the Bank of England taking extraordinary steps to secure the plumbing of the economic system.
He has warned that the UK will have the lowest growth among the big group of 7 industrial countries next year.
So, just how did the UK mess up so badly? We used to be a powerhouse, renowned for our stability and prosperity. London used to be the financial hub of Europe. Now, the world watches as our once mighty nation falls from grace. Years of poor governing, poor decision making, misplaced priorities has put the UK on a steep decline. We now see a cost of living crisis, skyrocketing inflation, but consistently low wages. At the same time, record profits for corporations. Years of frustration and public anger is now being expressed in nationwide strikes. Although every country is suffering from recession, why is it the UK is by far the worst performing economy in the advanced world? Well, let's find out.
UK, where the Bank of England has made an emergency intervention which it says is needed to maintain financial stability.
This is almost unprecedented. It's certainly very unusual to see such big movements in these markets.
On the 6th of September 2022, Liz Truss was elected Prime Minister of the UK after Boris Johnson had resigned from the role. What followed led the UK on the edge of its worst economic disaster in its history. By the 25th of October, she, along with the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, resigned from their roles, making Truss the shortest serving Prime Minister in UK history. Now, the UK is projected to be the only advanced economy to enter recession this year. So how did this all unfold? It is important to provide the economic backdrop at the time, which was an inflation crisis due to rising gas and oil prices from the war in Ukraine, which eventually led to a recession. Note that the recession we are seeing is not the cause for the UK performing considerably worse than every other economy. Instead, it is merely context for the situation most of the world was going through. Now we know we're in a recession. What was the best thing the UK government could have done? Remember, bringing down inflation was the most important policy. Option 1, let the Bank of England do its job, raising interest rates to cool inflation and slowly bringing the economy back to normal. Option 2, try to rush growth back to previous levels by announcing tax cuts with no indication of how to pay for them. Of course, our government chose option 2. They neglected basic economic theory. Because politicians are so focused on ensuring re-election, they only focus on short-term goals, meaning they dish out short-term economic policies. Yes, short-term expansionary fiscal policies such as tax cuts can give the economy a temporary boost, but this recession is caused solely by inflation, so only policies tackling inflation will work. Tax cuts would contribute to inflation by pouring in money to the economy. Instead, reducing money supply through increasing interest rates would be the best option. But politicians see this as undesirable due to the length of time it takes for this to work. Truss and Kwarteng were either economically illiterate, ignorant to the long-term effects of their policies through the goal of short-term political popularity, or were blind to the immediate implications of their intentions. This single decision proved almost fatal. The stability and confidence in the UK economy plummeted overnight. The reason for this lied in the bond market. The government tried to sell bonds to pay for its tax cuts, while the Bank of England did the same thing at the same time to reduce circulating money, to reduce inflation. Because so much selling was going on, this drove bond prices down, making it more expensive for the government to borrow, while also indicating a failure in the economic system. As a result, investment into the UK dropped significantly, as investors were no longer confident in the UK's policies. This depreciated the UK currency down to its lowest level ever against the US dollar. These conditions built up and up, putting pressure on the economic systems in place in the UK. One market in particular pressure was the pension market. It came extremely close to collapse. Luckily, the Bank of England stepped in just in time, with the UK on the verge of disaster. It did this by doing the exact opposite policy it adopted previously. Instead of taking money out of the economy, it pumped money back into it. This calmed the bond markets and essentially saved the UK, with the pound recovering against the dollar. However, this would only work in the short term. In order for this crisis not to occur again, the government policies have to change. As a result, Liz Truss was forced to resign for the good of the country. Despite narrowly escaping an economic apocalypse, the UK is still feeling the after effects of this debacle. The fact that an advanced, supposedly stable first world economy needed its central bank to stop a certain collapse has permanently damaged the UK's reputation. It somewhat confirms the declining slope the UK has found itself on. Paris has overtaken London as Europe's financial hub. The Bank of England is behind the trends set by the American Fed, and the UK's constant switching of government prevents it from remaining as stable as before. But there is another key landmark that has caused the UK's lag behind other economies. A key feature of democracy is that the public gets its say on the outcomes of referendums, meaning us the people bear some responsibility for the effects of these decisions. As a collective, us Britons decided to vote for Brexit. We wanted to leave the European Union. Unbeknownst to most Leave voters, years later we are now seeing the negative effects of this decision. Rishi Sunak, now the Prime Minister of the UK, has claimed that he'll build a new, better economy post-Brexit. Leaving the EU essentially means that we are no longer part of the main trading bloc, so we are trading with Europe significantly less than before. Instead, it frees up the chances to choose our own trading partners. For example, the UK has recently reached deals with Australia and India. The obvious positive from this is that under the EU, we did not have this freedom to choose who we trade with, as we had to abide by their collective rules. However, the overarching negative to Brexit is the overall loss of trade. We cannot underestimate how important European trade is to the UK. It is more beneficial to trade with those who are closest to you geographically, as this, for one, results in lower transportation costs. Despite a weak increase in trade with non-EU countries, the amount of trade lost with the EU is significantly more. As a result, there's been a 15% reduction in overall trade intensity. Since COVID, all countries' exports have recovered to their pre-pandemic levels, all except the UK. This trade-off has not benefited the UK at all. It has resulted in a loss of output and negative growth. While the decision to leave the EU may not have only been an economic decision, with reasons such as sovereignty and taking back control of our own policies, there is no denying that Brexit has negatively impacted the UK economy, at least in this short period of time. This may be for the reasons previously stated, or it could be that the war in Ukraine and the following recession has exacerbated all these effects, meaning we could return to normal once this all blows over. We can't say for certain the future impacts. There have been some stark predictions though. Brexit will cause an estimated reduction of 4% of GDP over 15 years. If this plays out, the UK will continue to lag behind rival economies for the foreseeable future. Or this could just be a test of patience as we wait to see more positive impacts of Brexit in the long run. The fall of the UK economy is a tragic story of government failures, incompetence and misplaced priorities. A disastrous decision to prioritise short-term political gain over sound economic policy has brought the country to the brink, and the resulting cost of living crisis, record profits for corporations, and consistent low wages leading to national strikes and public outrage just proves that the country is in turmoil. This fall serves as a warning to other countries to prioritise sound economic policies, not to succumb to short-term political gain. The consequences can be dire, so it is essential to take a measured, long-term approach to ensure the stability and prosperity of a nation.